Why is Jim Harbaugh back in the NFL? Comes down to one factor. He wants that Super Bowl. And why does he want that Super Bowl? He wants it because of legacy. And I see coaching legacy as kind of two paths. One, you can build up a program, stay at that program, build multiple championships, and really own a program or a conference or a certain time period in football. The other way to do it, and I thought this was the path that maybe Urban Meyer was heading down, and I think Jim Harbaugh is now leading the charge here, is prove that you can win at multiple levels, across multiple conferences, across different styles of players and quarterbacks and eras. That's the sign of an elite coach. That's how you build legacy, and it's what Jim Harbaugh is doing from the days in San Diego, after his playing days, San Diego, Stanford, San Fran. You go back to your alma mater and then now heading to the San Diego Chargers. He went back to Michigan and accomplished his goal. He brought back his university, not only to prominence, but to get the national championship. He restored the program and he got him a ring. And I respect the competitor in him wants to get on to the next thing. And Jim Harbaugh never had more leverage in terms of his ability to jump up to the NFL than he did now. I think it's the reason it took so long for the Chargers to announce him as their head coach. That process was what, three and a half weeks? More like 3 true weeks. There was chatter a good 10 days before the national championship games. Full 3-week, 4-week ordeal. And that's what I'm very intrigued to see. Jim Harbaugh getting the Chargers job. That delay, from everything you read, was a byproduct of him wanting more support, him wanting more control, him wanting more investment from the top down in the systems and processes that he wanted to set up. Well, what exactly does that mean? Because it's not going to be stuff that's like super sexy. It's going to be more investment to nutrition. It's going to be more investment to the training staff. It's going to be more control over XYZ. Things that the average fan is not necessarily going to realize, but just by way of an example, if you invest more into the nutrition side of thing and you're able to allow a 315-pound right tackle to get 2 more productive years out of his career because he connected more with the Chargers nutrition staff. That's something that will never, ever, ever make a video like this. But that's something that could result into wins down the road if Harbaugh got the systems and processes that he wants. I don't even know if that's the factor he's eyeing, but I do think it's important that Jim Harbaugh used his leverage to get the job that he wanted, to get the missing Super Bowl that he's after. And outside of the quality of life that is not insignificant in terms of why Harbaugh is moving from college to the NFL, why Harbaugh is going after the Chargers job and not some other franchise in the NFL because of quality life, because of living in LA, is because of who his signal caller is going to be, Justin Herbert. And Herbert's at an interesting time in his career too. He's at that crossroads. He's proven the naysayers wrong. A lot of negative chatter of him coming out of Oregon into the NFL. Was he soft? Was he quirky? Can he relate to guys? Can he be that leader? Can it result in wins? I think when you take a step back, we know it can result in wins. We see the talent. Can it result in championships? That's the next question. But there's no denying that Justin Herbert is an extremely talented quarterback. And from Jim Harbaugh's perspective, you now have one of the top quarterbacks in the National Football League. And when you have that, you have a chance to win. So many of these job openings in the NFL don't have that. And that's the first item of business. Who is going to be our signal caller? Who is going to be that dude running our franchise? We got to figure that out. Jim Harbaugh doesn't need to figure that out. He's got his dude in Justin Herbert. But with all that being said, an efficient, young rookie Justin Herbert over the past 2 years has become less efficient. And that to me is the critical factor, because when you look at Jim Harbaugh, the quarterbacks he's had are extremely efficient and have some of their highest producing years when Jim Harbaugh is their head coach. All that to say, this feels like an absolutely pivotal moment in Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh's career, but especially Justin Herbert, just given the stage of where his career is at. It will be funny though. I mean, you have one of the most intense coaches in the history of the game. I would almost say like an awkwardly chill guy. Like you can tell it's genuine, but you're also like, dude, I feel like you should have more juice, but you don't, which is totally respect. Like you got to do you. But just think about that for a sec. Jim Harbaugh's fire. Like the scene of like him shaking JJ McCarthy like pregame, or maybe that was like Rudock or Wilton Spate when he was at Michigan. Like imagine him doing that with Justin Herbert. I literally don't know how Justin Herbert would react to that. Either way, they're linked. But I do want to go through Jim Harbaugh's track record of quarterbacks that have played with him, because I think it goes underappreciated the fact that he's had success with quarterbacks of different skill sets, different stages of their careers, different ways of winning, yet he consistently has been able to get the best out of all those quarterbacks. First one, we got Rich Gannon, 2002, 2003 with the Oakland Raiders. This was right after Harbaugh got out of playing, if I'm not mistaken. Rich Gannon had his best career. Age 37 with Harbaugh, was the the NFL MVP. You sleep on that. I sleep on that too. Personal bests in success rate, yards per game, adjusted net yards per attempt, and expected points per play. This was the first time that Harbaugh had coached quarterbacks specifically, and to put up NFL MVP numbers, that's as good as anyone could have expected. Moving to 2005, you had Josh Johnson at the University of San Diego. Only lost 4 games in his career at San Diego. 30-4 record. Finished with 11,563 yards of total offense. He's got records, but what's most important, at least from an evaluation standpoint, is Harbaugh recruited him, evaluated him, and developed him into that dude. It's not necessarily like he's just inheriting the talent like he is with Justin Herbert. He's able to develop and mold the quarterback like we saw this past year with J.J. McCarthy, which we'll get into. 2011, Andrew Luck. Little quote for you, 13 years ago, but Andrew Luck said that Jim Harbaugh, he's a heck of a coach. He's a winner. I know I learned a bunch from him. I feel like I grew as a player, as a man, a lot under him. The whole Luck era is interesting because, and I'll make this comp on videos as we get into NFL combine season, Andrew Luck is the best quarterback prospect since Caleb Williams right now. Yet the difference is usually you think when you have a top quarterback prospect that we're going to ask him to throw the ball 35, 40 times a game. We're going to ask him to win the game for us all the time. Jim Harbaugh doesn't do that with his quarterbacks, and there's no better example than Andrew Luck. Even though you had Andrew Luck on your team, the identity of Jim Harbaugh was still physicality and run the rock to then open up the pass game. Physicality and run the rock to protect our defense. Physicality and run the rock to establish a culture in terms of when games get tight, this is who we are. This is how we win games. Those types of factors are outside of the quarterback position. Sure, the quarterback plays a role in that, but I think oftentimes, and you see this at the college ranks, when you have this high-flying quarterback, coaches feel the need to just give him the keys to the car all the time. But that doesn't always equate to winning. And when you don't win, a quarterback's legacy, a quarterback's comfort can diminish. That's the consistent part about all these quarterbacks, is they weren't asked to be Superman under Jim Harbaugh, because Harbaugh makes a conscious effort of knowing that doesn't win you championships, or at least it doesn't consistently win you games in his style. After that, he went to Alex Smith. And Alex Smith, I mean, he was getting from the #1 overall NFL draft pick. People were thinking that his days were numbered, and Jim Harbaugh sparked a second wave in Alex Smith's career. The year before Harbaugh got there, Alex Smith was 6-10 on an underperforming team. The best season he had before Harbaugh was probably 2009. He went 5-5 as a starter, completed 60% of his passes, just 2,300 yards, which is kind of crazy nowadays with where the NFL is at. 18 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Very game manager-y-esque. When he got with Harbaugh, he led a 13-win team. Completion percentage increased. Threw for more than 3,000 yards. Upped his touchdowns to 17. Interceptions, just 5. So right away became more efficient, which gets back to that Justin Herbert point. Next, we got Colin Kaepernick. And this is another underrated factor for me. Hopefully, Jim Harbaugh never has to make a quarterback change, and Justin Herbert is his dude for the next decade. But there are 2 very notable quarterback changes that Jim Harbaugh chose to make tough decisions. This one right here, going away from Alex Smith, going to Colin Kaepernick, and ultimately getting to a Super Bowl. And then also recently with Michigan, choosing to go with J.J. McCarthy and sprinkle him in when you had an established starter in place. Those aren't easy decisions to make. From an outsider's perspective, they might be like, oh, this guy's better, just go with him. Oh, this guy's more exciting, he's more dynamic, go with him. But understanding the temperament of your locker room and the culture that you've built, Jim Harbaugh seems to have a great grasp on that. He traded up for Colin Kaepernick in the 2011 NFL draft to 36. That's always an awkward time to draft a quarterback because it's like, all right, we're making a substantial investment in that quarterback, but he's not a top end of the first round type of quarterback. You can sometimes alienate your team of like, man, we could use that 36th pick to get an edge rusher or something like that. Why are we getting a quarterback that presumably is going to be a backup for a little bit? That's just a delicate spot to draft a quarterback. Obviously, it worked out for the Niners there in the short term. And don't sleep on this. Colin Kaepernick, they totally adjusted their offense. They utilized a lot of that shotgun, pistol, zone read, which at that time was pretty unheard of in the NFL. We see it a lot more with Lamar now, and yeah, Mike Vick had flavors of it back then, but Kaepernick was 101 at that point. And so many quarterback whisperers or offensive junkies usually have like their style of playing, not necessarily Jim Harbaugh. He's been able to win different ways. You had the Kaepernick way right now, and in this style of offense, the Stanford running out 4 different tight ends, that was different too. After Cap, you had Jake Rudock at Michigan. Harbaugh brought out the best of Rudock. It was an interesting time for Harbaugh, right? First year, goes and gets the grad transfer quarterback. Remember, Iowa went with C.J. Beathard, which then allowed Rudock to be available and go to Michigan. It felt like, recalling that season, there was like a ramp up period, and it felt like there was more meat on the bone for Rudock in that season if he had been in the program longer. But still, it was an efficient season for Rudock, the best of his career, if I'm not mistaken. And again, a totally different vibe. Colin Kaepernick, way different than Jake Rudock. You went Jake Rudock to a few years later, you had Cade McNamara. I'm skipping a few years. Their style of plays pretty similar. Cade McNamara has an Ohio State win under him. And so far, with Cade McNamara, a big-time recruit, his best play as a quarterback is under Jim Harbaugh. And then I referenced it earlier. You make that tough decision to start sprinkling in J.J. McCarthy. And by all accounts, that was a phenomenal decision, phenomenal timing, and ultimately got him a national championship. It is worth noting, Josh Johnson, Alex Smith, and Andrew Luck technically did receive more acclaim after Harbaugh, so it's not like it's everything he touches is gold per se. But I will say everything Harbaugh has touched at the quarterback position, I think that's the appropriate word. It has been effective. You haven't had major flops at the quarterback position, and you haven't had major flops offensively. I know they've had to level up. And I know Michigan's offense wasn't dynamic this past year, but that's what we're getting at. The offense has a style that is conducive to winning. Might not be the high-flying numbers, but it's conducive to winning. The big factor here, and I think this will be a huge adjustment for Justin Herbert, is the number of pass attempts he's going to have in a game or is going to go way down. Last year, Herbert was 8th in pass attempts per game. Year before that, he was 2nd in pass attempts. In 2021, he was also 2nd in pass attempts. Going back to Jim Harbaugh's days with the 49ers, 2011, his teams were 31st in the National Football League in pass attempts. Next year, 31st again, 2013, 32nd in 2014, 29th. That is a stark contrast of styles of play. If I'm Justin Herbert, though, that is music to my ears. I don't want to have to be Superman every single game because that's not championship football. That's not winning football. I want to scale it back. Of course, he wants to still put up stats and have success and be explosive, but I want to scale it back to protect my defense, to allow my team to have an identity where I can win in different ways. That right there, to go from top 10 in the NFL in passing to, I would say it's almost guaranteed next year he's going to be bottom half of the NFL, but he could even be bottom 3rd or bottom 4th of the NFL. Long term, though, that's going to help Justin Herbert's career. And the other thing that I want to figure out is just how do these guys' personality mesh and mold? You look at Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, they seem to have a great cadence there. You hear some of the stuff with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Big picture, they're cool. They won Super Bowls, but there was some friction at the end. It's been well documented. Lamar Jackson and the different coordinators that he's had and maybe hasn't had the foundation that a Patrick Mahomes has. Well, for Justin Herbert, by all accounts, it feels like him and Harbaugh are fire and ice. Harbaugh's fire, Herbert's a little bit more ice, a little bit more chill. How does that work? I'm confident it will work because Jim Harbaugh has the track record of making it work with different personalities, different eras, different schemes. But that's just going to be interesting. I also think Herbert's personality gets overblown, or at least it used to. Like, he's got some fire in him. There's clips of him hyping up his receivers at the combine. There's clips of him getting into it in games. He obviously runs the rock, not afraid to get hit, stick his head in there. Like, he can fire the guys up. But that's just an interesting factor to see how it plays out. At the end of the day, they're football dudes. They're going to get along. Jim Harbaugh said he was even a little starstruck when he talked with Herbert on the phone for the first time last week. But it'll be interesting to see Harbaugh in the NFL for legacy, for quality of life, and because he's got a quarterback and a chance to go get that Super Bowl, which when he started his coaching journey, there's 2 big factors: a natty at his alma mater and getting that Super Bowl. He got the natty. He almost got the Super Bowl with the Niners. He's going to have another shot here with the Chargers.